Hello student, in today's class we are going to study mechanics. We are going to study mechanics. So in mechanics we study the effect of a system of forces on the mechanical state of a body. So here mechanical state means state of rest and the state of motion. Suppose a body is at rest, and there is another body and it is in motion. So a system of forces is acting on this body which is at rest, and a system of forces is acting on a body which is in motion. So what effect these system of forces are going to produce on the body which is at rest, and there is another body which is in motion. So that we are going to study in mechanics. So let us understand mechanics in a very simple manner. So one thing we remember that when a single force acts on a body, the state of the body is bound to change. That means when you see a body and its state is changing, from that you can draw an idea that a single force is acting on the body. So when a single force acts on a body, the state of the body is bound to change. So from this we draw another idea. That means the state of a body is not changing. So when state of body is not changing, what idea we can draw? That means a single force is not acting, because if a single force is acting on a body, its state is going to change, but here the state is not changing. So when state is not changing means single force is not acting. That means there may be more than one force acting on the body. So when the state of a body is not changing, you observe a body and what you find? You find that the state of a body is not changing. So when state of a body is not changing, that means there may be more than one forces acting on the body. So from this it is clear that more than one forces are acting on the body. That means minimum two forces are acting on the body. More than one means, let us minimum two forces are acting on the body. There may be more than two forces. So minimum two forces are acting on the body. So when the state of a body is not changing. So let us see here. Suppose there is a body here and this is a straight line. So one force of magnitude 5 Newton is acting in this direction and another force of 5 Newton is acting on this same body in this direction. So this 5 Newton and this 5 Newton will produce no result on this state of this body. So the state of the body is not going to change. It is a very simple idea that when the state of the body is not changing, so that implies or that gives an idea that more than one forces are acting on the body. And let us start with minimum two forces. Minimum two forces. So this is a situation where we find that when minimum two forces are acting on a body and its state is not changing, so that two forces are equal in magnitude, opposite in direction, and they are acting on the same straight line. They are acting on the same straight line. So when state of the body is not changing, we conclude that there are more than one forces acting on the body, and when the state of the body is changing, there is a single force acting on the body. Let us study two cases. In this case, a number of forces are acting on a body, and those forces are F1, F2, F3, and F4. Here also, on another body, number of forces are acting. So we find that here the state of the body is not changing. The state of the body is not changing here. But here, what we find? We find that the state of the body is changing. State of the body is changing. Here, state of the body is not changing, and here, state of the body is changing. A number of forces are acting on both the bodies. So, before we have found that when state of a body is not changing, so that means number of forces acting on the body are more than one, because when one force act on a body, its state is bound to change. जेतबे गोटे बॉडी पर गोटे फोर्स एक्ट करथाय तार स्टेट रे निश्चित कोन आसीबो चेंजेस आसीबो, किंतु जेतबे गोटे बॉडी रो स्टेट रे चेंजेस आसु नाही, दैट सेतु हमें आईडिया कले यार्थ से बॉडी पर गोटे एक रु अधिक फोर्सेस कोन करछि एक्ट करछि. सो हियर more than one forces are acting on the body, and its state is not changing. Its state is not changing. So we are okay with this situation. But here, what happens? Here, more than one forces are acting, and its state is changing. Its state is changing. And we have an idea that when state of a body is changing, that means one force is acting on the body, or when one force acts on a body, its state is bound to चेंज. यार्थ निश्चित इथे बा ए सिस्टम रे हम देखा जाउ जी केते गुडे फोर्स एक्ट करछि देखा जाउ छी. यार्थ ए जो फोर्सेस माने इक्विवेलेंट टू ए सिंगल फोर्स. यार्थ एते गुडे फोर्स आर दिस फोर्सेस आर इक्विवेलेंट टू ए सिंगल फोर्स, सपोज F, a single force F. यार्थ दिस F is equivalent to this number of forces. सेति पय एठी बॉडी रो स्टेट कोन होछि चेंज होछि. सो मेकानिक्स रे हमें केमती नंबर ऑफ फोर्सेस को ए सिंगल फोर्स रे कोन करबा कन्वर्ट करबा तारो लॉ तार टेक्निक सब जानिबा. सो हियर नंबर ऑफ फोर्सेस आर एक्टिंग ऑन द बॉडी एंड स्टेट इज नॉट चेंजिंग. या तो result is zero. Result is zero. Number of forces acting in the body, but its state is not changing. That means result is zero. That means it is a state where no force is acting on the body, or resultant force is zero. Resultant force is zero. Resultant force is zero. But here state is changing. That means a single force is replacing all these forces, and that single force is the resultant of these forces. So here a resultant force force is acting on the body. A resultant force is acting on the body. Here resultant force is 0, but here there is a resultant force. That is why the state of the body is changing here, but here state of the body is not changing. So let a single force act on a body. Let a single force act on a body. So this single force is the resultant of itself. The single force is resultant of itself. So that single force is resultant of itself. That single force is the resultant of itself. That means resultant force is not equal to 0. Resultant force is not equal to 0 because there is a single force and single force is resultant of itself. So resultant is not 0. So here state of the body is going to change. Your state of the body is going to change. But in this, suppose in the second case, number of forces are acting on the body. Number of forces are acting on the body. Number of forces are acting on the body. So here the case may be that resultant force is equal to 0 or resultant force is not equal to 0. But in this case, resultant force is not equal to 0 because a single force is acting and single force is the resultant of itself. So resultant is there. So resultant is not 0. But in this case, number of forces are acting. So there are two possibilities. One is resultant force may be 0 or resultant force may not be 0. So if resultant force is 0, then if resultant force is 0, then state will not change. State will not change if resultant force is 0. But when resultant is not 0, then state will change. State will change. So here, when a single force is acting on a body, and that single force is resultant of itself, so we are not going to find anything because that single force is the resultant, and that single force is changing the state of the body. But when number of forces are acting on a body, we have to find what is the resultant force. So there may be two cases. Resultant force comes out to be 0 or resultant force may not be 0. If resultant force is 0, then the state of the body will not change, and if resultant force is not 0, the state of the body will bound to change. So in mechanics, in the initial state or initial part of the mechanics, we are going to find out resultant of number of forces, and we study different laws and technique to find the resultant of number of forces when they are acting on a body. And if the resultant is 0, the state of the body will not change, and if the resultant is not equal to 0, the state of the body will change. So here, state of the body. And we have seen that there are two states of mechanic state of a body. A body is at rest, and the body in motion. Body at rest and body at motion. So what we find? Suppose we find a body which is at rest, and it is at rest at any time when we observe it. When we observe it, it is always at rest. So that means here resultant force is 0. Resultant force is 0. That means there may be number of forces acting on the body and their resultant is 0. That is why the state of the body is not changing. And suppose the resultant, the number of forces are acting body and the resultant is not 0 and initially body is at rest, so it will start its motion. It will start its motion. So state is changing. State is changing. But here the body is in motion and the resultant is not 0. Resultant is not 0. Body is in motion and resultant is not 0. That means number of forces acting body and the body resultant is not 0 and body is in motion. So body is in motion and resultant is not 0. That means the motion of the body is going to change. Motion of the body is going to change. So motion of the body is going to change means the velocity of the body will change. Velocity of the body will change. Velocity of the body will what? Change when resultant is not 0. And if resultant is 0, then velocity of the body will not change. Then velocity of the body will not change when resultant is equal to 0. When resultant is 0, the velocity of the body will not change. So by looking or by observing the velocity of the body, we can say whether its state is changing or not. A body is at rest means initial velocity is 0 and after some time it starts moving means velocity, it is having some velocity. That means the velocity changes from 0 to that value. So we can say that the state is changing. But when the body is always at rest, that means at any time velocity is 0. That means the state of the body is not changing. Similarly here the body is in motion, so it has some initial velocity. After some time we see that its velocity has changed. So when velocity has changed means resultant force on the body is not 0. Similarly, suppose the body has some initial velocity. After some time we see that the velocity has the same value. The velocity has same, but velocity remains the same. In that case, we conclude that resultant on the body is equal to 0. So it is very important to find out the resultant force of the system of forces acting on the body. A system of forces are acting on the body. What is its resultant? That is a very important aspect of the mechanics. A system of forces acts on a body. A system of forces act on a body and we have to find its resultant force. We have to find its resultant force. A system of forces acts on a body and we have to find its resultant. If resultant comes out to be 0, the state of the body is not going to change, and if resultant is not 0, the state of the body is going to change. So how to find resultant of a system of forces, that is the very important aspect of mechanics that we are going to deal in the initial part of the mechanics.